All right. Again, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us to the Fatherhood Learning Academy on July 27th. I'm Denisha Charles. I'm the project manager on the NICHQ team on Healthy Start, and I will be taking us through our agenda today. So first, we'll have our housekeeping done by Lisa. Ken Harris will then welcome and introduce you all to the Healthy Start Fatherhood Learning Academy. We'll then pass it over to Dr. Jeffrey Johnson from NPCL to go over the overview of the Fatherhood Learning Academy. We will then end with homework and next steps. So I'm going to pass it over to Lisa to go through.
Thank you, Denisha, and hello, everybody. First of all, for meeting logistics, this session is being recorded. All participants are muted upon entry, and we ask that you remain muted to limit background noise. We encourage the use of the chat box to ask questions or post comments. All questions will be captured from the chat box, and we will address as many as we can. Next, for audio, if you can hear me, you're likely connected correctly, but we will do a quick review. After you join the meeting by clicking the meeting link, an audio conference box may appear. You can join by either computer audio or phone. To join by computer audio, click computer audio and you should be all set. To join by phone, dial the given number, enter the meeting ID and press pound. Then enter your given participant ID and press pound. You will then be connected to this session's audio via phone. And lastly, to access the chat box, click on the chat button in the bottom of your Zoom screen. A sidebar will appear to the right. Type your questions or comments into the chat box and send them to everyone. Again, we encourage the use of the chat box for any questions or comments during this session. That is all for housekeeping. Thank you, and I will turn it back to Denisha.
Thank you, Lisa. And again, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon to the first Healthy Start Fatherhood Learning Academy. So what we'll do is go over what a Learning Academy is and what the Fatherhood Learning Academy will cover. Next slide, please. So the Healthy Start Learning Academies provide an opportunity for our Healthy Start grantees to participate in a curriculum-based course or courses on specific topics associated with the 4 Healthy Start approaches in the 19 Healthy Start benchmarks. These learning academies build Healthy Start staff knowledge and prepare them to apply their learnings to their Healthy Start programs' day-to-day activities. So again, we welcome you all to your Learning Academy. Next slide. So it is structured a little differently than our other webinars and presentations. So Learning Academies will have monthly virtual sessions. We'll go through our schedule a little later in the slides. There will be some required course reading to go through the different sections, the different topics that we'll cover. There will be homework assignments, like mentioned before. Homework assignments could be individual or in a group setting. And then in the future, all sessions will be posted on EPIC, which is our Healthy Start Tea and Support Center website, in an e-learning format for those who cannot attend the live session. So like I said before, we'll go through our schedule. If there are any scheduling conflicts, we do record every session and post our homework if you need to catch up later on. Next slide, please. Now, the goal for the Fatherhood Learning Academy specifically is to examine the breadth and depth of fatherhood movement in the 20th and the 21st century, deeply examining the policies and practices that have influenced fatherhood programming that have either encouraged or impeded father engagement. Next slide. So like I mentioned before, this is our schedule throughout. So we will be meeting once a month for 5 different sessions. So today, of course, July 27th, our next meeting will be August 24th and so on. The times will not change. It will continue to be 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern time. Next slide, please. And we are going to practice an activity, which is what we like to call feed forward. So for the Learning Academy, we know a lot of things will be discussed, a lot of content will be discussed. If there are any times that you have an idea, you have an aha moment, you have a question, a comment, or if you just have a brainstorming idea and you want to note it down, we have something called the Jamboard. So if you've used Jamboard before, it's very similar to a blank whiteboard. And what you can do is stick your idea, stick your note right on that Jamboard as we're going on. So think of this as an open notebook with your classmates. So as we're going through the different content, if there's anything that comes to mind, of course you can share in the chat as well. But if there's something that you'd like to also just note down to go back to, or something that we'd like to go over, because the NICHQ team does look at the Jamboard right after, you could do so as well. So I will hand it off to Lisa just to show you all what a Jamboard looks like and how you all could use it.
Thank you, Denisha, and hi again, everybody. So we posted the link to the Jamboard in the chat box, so feel free to click that and walk through this with me as I go along and give you a quick demo. Once you are in the Jamboard, which I can see some of you already logged on, thank you. You can go on to the left-hand toolbar and you'll see a lot of different tools. And what we recommend is using a sticky note. If you highlight over this square box with 2 lines through it, it'll say sticky note, click on it, and it'll pop up and you can type your notes here, and you can even change the color of the sticky note and diversify. So once you're done typing in your notes, go ahead and click save, and it'll allow you to continue to write as many notes as you would like. Once you're done, you can click cancel or step out of it. There we go. Thank you, Demetrius. Great. And so you can use this to first put notes or comments on Ken's introduction, which will be coming up next. On the next slide up at the top here, if you click the right arrow, you can also post comments to Dr. Johnson's overview of the Learning Academy. So again, use the sticky note, type in your notes, and click save, and then move it around so that we can see what comments or notes you have and address them if we need to. Anything else, Denisha or the rest of the team, before we get moving to the rest of the slides?
Lisa, I would just add that when you're doing this session, they might want to put their name and their site on the sticky note. So if Dr. Johnson is looking at them or we're looking at them, we'll know who actually posted it. So that's
perfect. Thank you, Ken.
Alrighty.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Let me go ahead and transition back to our slides. Great. And so
we'll carry on and pass it over to Ken Harris for our welcome and introduction of the Learning Academy. Oh, Ken, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that, everyone, but doing that all day long. So good afternoon, everyone. It's good to have everyone here, and we're excited. I'm certainly excited to be here with Dr. Johnson and excited to offer this Learning Academy on fatherhood. So we're going to get into it in a little bit. What I would like to do first is just really do an assessment of our room. And if you've been to many of our offerings at the TA and Support Center, we've been really pausing before we get in to do a pre-session assessment. So there are 5 questions that we have here. We just ask you to go right ahead. We've launched the poll. So go ahead and answer those 5 questions. And again, no right or wrong answer. It's anonymous. We just want to see where we are as a collective. And it's important as we start out today's session just to see where folks are. 1, can you communicate clearly the reason why male involvement or fatherhood program is in place and the issues that it's addressing? So really understanding why fatherhood is included in our Healthy Start model, not just in general, but just thinking about included in the Healthy Start program. 2, a question is, you can articulate what measurable results we want or expect by focusing on male involvement in fatherhood program and what we want to do over these next 5 years especially. 3, you understand the role that you're asked to fulfill and you're willing and able to commit to this program and do that work in your project in light of other competing priorities of your time and of your role. 4thly, you understand the benefits that result in accomplishing the goals and understand the consequences or threats to the health and well-being of infants and children, as well as mothers and communities when fathers are not involved. And lastly, and the 5th, is you have sufficient information, support system, staff, necessary partners. As you think about your program, you have what you need in order to implement the fatherhood program. So just go ahead and quickly answer that, and we hope to get all of you engaged here. So it looks like a little bit, about half almost. So let's give them a few more seconds here. Just a few more, go right ahead. Almost there. Just a couple more of you, go right ahead. All right, good. See if we can get a couple more, at least to get to 25 of you. This is an important assessment to do, and we'll do it again at the end. So we really want to measure our learning over this time. So we'll check in again at the end. So this is good to do as a pre. Okay, I think we've held there for a while. So why don't we go ahead and share the results, Lisa? So as she shares the results, take a look at kind of where we are as a group today. You have an idea of like who is among us. Yeah. And I think, Dean Johnson, if you don't mind, I'm going to invite folks in your, with your window, with your name in it. If you want to put a comma and just share the site that you're from, the project that you're from, and that way, as we're looking and see who's in the room, we'll kind of know kind of where folks are from around the country as well. That may help us as well. So I know we'll do some other things, but that's using the Zoom features is kind of a good way of starting some of that. So thank you all for taking the poll. Gives us an idea where we are. And again, we'll check in at the end to see where we are at the end of the session. All right, so let's switch screens. If you want to let me share my screen. Thank you. Okay, what I'd like to do, the purpose of my presentation today is really setting the context for this Learning Academy. And so some of the things you've heard before, but I think they are worth repeating. And as we do this work, and I speak in the we, because I speak of my close colleague, Ken Scarborough, and the work that we've done over the years, and our work with the National Healthy Start Association, and working with Deborah Frazier, and just there's so many people to mention. And as you'll learn from your dean, it's really all of the folks that have contributed to the fatherhood work over the last 30 years. But what I want to do today is really set the context and the foundation for this academy. And you're really in for a treat, and we are really blessed to have Dr. Johnson to serve as your dean. And I'll talk about Dr. Johnson a little bit later for those of you who don't know this person that I consider a pioneer in this work, and certainly one who understands working with families and community, and so understands fatherhood at a very deep level that's really appropriate for us as we do the Healthy Start program. So I'm going to talk about Healthy Start Fatherhood, and we call it Healthy Start Fatherhood for a reason. It's not just fatherhood in general, but what is Healthy Start Fatherhood? Like, what does it look like? And so what does fatherhood look like within a maternal child health program? And it's important to understand that conceptually and the evolution of fatherhood work within Healthy Start. And so as you're going to learn about the fatherhood movement, which is important to undergirding your learning and understanding of the work that you do day to day, it is really important to understand how we got to where we are today. And so that's the purpose of really what I wanted, is just set the foundation. And again, we've had fatherhood trainings, we've done individual TA, and some of these things are repeated, but again, it's important that we drill this in, and all of us should have this information. And the idea is to really build this into the future and sustaining the work through current day practitioners. So we're really glad that you're here and signed up for this academy. So again, as we talk about father within Healthy Start, it's really connecting fathers to the participants, to the Healthy Start moms, right? Connecting dads to those moms, connecting dads to pregnancy, and then connecting dads to birth and birth outcomes. Healthy Start is an infant mortality reduction initiative. And so what role do men and fathers play in infant mortality elimination, not just reduction, but elimination? And so really we have the opportunity of showing what it looks like within Healthy Start. So again, emphasis is on fatherhood within the MCH framework. How do we now, as we're including fathers and into this framework, what does it look like, and how are we showing that it actually has this impact? Because again, this is going to make the difference at the end of the day. What can we say about infant mortality, maternal mortality, and other outcomes that are better because fathers have been involved? Healthy Start, MCH program, it will be that program that can tell and make that distinction versus a standalone father program. So again, with Healthy Start, it's about infant mortality. It's now, we're focusing a lot on maternal mortality. So all the issues that Healthy Start has been about for 30 years, we now need to add fathers to that conversation and make them part of the work we do moving forward in a more inclusive way. So this is the first time fatherhood is a required component in an MCH program. We continue to emphasize this, and it's exciting for the Division of Healthy Start to, for the first time, to have fatherhood as a required component. So again, each of the Healthy Start programs are required to serve fathers, and as a goal of 100 a year. You can serve more than that, but really connecting to 1/3 of the pregnant women that you enroll is the goal. And so this opportunity of seeing, anywhere from 10,000 to 30,000 dads a year around the country and telling a story about these fathers, which represent urban, rural, tribe, and border communities. And that is the work that you're up to. And it's exciting to think about you all now in the next 5 years being able to tell this story in the end. So this is important to understand that you're part of a national movement, if you will, of looking at what fatherhood looks like within MCH and being able to tell this collective story about thousands and thousands of dads. So it's not an easy task to include men in a system that was not designed for him. So again, the work within Healthy Start over these decades has always been about fatherhood. Fatherhood has always been important, but it's not easy to include men in a system that was not designed for him. So when we think of today, fatherhood is now a required component. There was a lot of work and a lot of people that really contributed to the work of fatherhood being a required component within Healthy Start. And so again, you're going to learn about people, learn about organizations that have been committed to doing this work over the decades. And it took some time to include fatherhood into this particular system. But remember, the maternal child health program in this country was not designed with him in mind. It wasn't designed for him. Other programs, you hear WIC, Women, Infant, and Children, anywhere you see where fathers are not included, usually those are systems that were not designed for him. And so again, how do we really include him? Not just add him on, but how do we actually include him in those systems? So it's not an easy task. We understand that, and it's important that you understand the history and why we got to the point here where the division now has 101 programs that now have father as a required component. It is a great achievement, and kudos to all of those workers and directors and coordinators over the years from Healthy Start programs that pushed the issue, and the work certainly of the National Healthy Start Association and its leadership around fatherhood over these decades. So systems, think about how they're designed. So wherever your Healthy Start program is situated, how it's designed, how it was built, how are you looking at that system and its design when you think about including fathers? And so I know many directors and program managers, that was part of what you did in creating a vision for what it looks like or will look like even before you got funded beginning in 2019 for this cycle. But you had to write a vision, a plan of how fathers fit into the design of your program. And then how is he going to utilize those services once he makes connection with your workers, with the mom, with babies, after birth, as in parenting, really describing what his utilization of your services, and then also other services that he may get through working with you. But let's just go back, because it's important to look back in order to leap forward. And so again, building off of this history, Healthy Start started 30 years ago in 1991. Infant mortality was horrible all over the world, but it was really, really bad in America, in an industrialized country. We had worse infant mortality rates than some underdeveloped countries. And so at that time, our country ranked poorly. We were 21st in infant mortality among industrialized nations. And the rate of infant deaths for African American babies was 17.6 versus 8.9 for Caucasian babies. And again, it was unacceptable. And so we had been addressing maternal child health for a long time before 1991. But in 1991, the conversation in this country was we have to do something different. And we need to have a community-driven approach to addressing this. And that's how the Healthy Start program was born. The Healthy Start Initiative was born out of this thinking about what can we do to do better, because we're not hitting that mark. And so we had the Healthy Start Initiative that was started, and the original director was Dr. Thurman McCann. And this is important history to know, because as we build and continue to build fatherhood, it's important to know how Healthy Start started, because it was a community-driven approach to infant mortality reduction. So when we talk about including fathers, this is another strategy that we now have as part of our program to address infant mortality and elimination of. So to the right, you see the different cycles of Healthy Start, but it began with the problem. And who's the problem going to address? How are we going to how we are going to get to do it, and what we need to do it, and what is the belief. And that's important, the belief that fathers matter. And we knew that from the beginning, but as we continue to build the defense for fatherhood, understanding why we believe fathers are important and being able to demonstrate that overall. So that was Healthy Start was a strategy, a community-driven approach, a community-based strategy to addressing the issue. And so again, when we think about fatherhood, it's coming into that belief that working with communities, we have a better opportunity to address the issues that plague them, and certainly in specific communities where disparities are greater. And so that's how the program started. As we continue in 2019 through this 2024 cycle, we have the opportunity of telling the story about fatherhood. And so as we think about across the country, 101 programs. So wherever you're situated, just imagine you will be able to tell the story of your particular community, but we have to be able to tell a collective story. So part of what we're doing and what you're doing and coming to a learning academy and all the other TA that you take advantage of at the center is really moving together and looking for what are the core elements that we all need. And the model that I'll talk about today that Ken and I co-created with the National Start Association, this core adaptive model for fatherhood, talks about some of those key elements. Again, and that was from examining over 150 programs across the country at the time and picking out what core elements were successful in all of these programs, and we'll share more of that later. So Healthy Start, right from the start, integrated male involvement in fatherhood into Healthy Start, and I'll talk about that a little bit. So it's Healthy Start has always been about increasing paternal involvement with children and promoting responsible fatherhood. So some of your colleagues that have been around for a long time, they can tell you what they've been up to since they started those early sites from 1991, the second round in the latter part of the 90s and 2000. They will tell you what they did with regards to increasing paternal involvement there. Not only increasing paternal involvement, but promoting father involvement. So Healthy Start communities have been engaged with efforts to involve fathers in program activities. And that was the idea of really bringing men into your program activities. And so Healthy Start, if there's any community around the country that understands that, Healthy Start knows how to bring fathers into your current work. And that's what many of you are up to. How do we include them in our program activities? And so we've always been about promoting that. And then also improving the well-being of children. We don't think of fathers and fatherhood just fathers by themselves. It's fathers in context to community, fathers in context to children. And so we've always focused on the well-being of children. So increasing the proportion of children that grow up with involved, responsible, committed fathers. Even if two adults are no longer together, how do we help them co-parent so that the child has access and benefit of both his or her parents? And so Healthy Start has always been about that, and really involving fathers in providing that practical support during pregnancy and in raising of their children, as well as helping parents then develop supportive and effective relationships. So many elements you see in Healthy Start programs around healthy relationships, and we know how important that is given the times that we live in. So let's look at an MCH program, and many of you know that the MCH program really started in 1912 with the Children's Bureau. I established the Children's Bureau, and that's when we started focus on women and children, and it just evolved over the years. But as you're going to learn in this academy, there were certain policies in place that either supported and encouraged father involvement, or many times when we look at community of color, you will see it really impeded involvement of poor families and fathers of color. But it's important to know that timeline. Significant things happened in 1912, 1935, and then in the 60s, there's a whole story. So as we think about what was happening with women and children and the evolution of MCH programs, we also had other things going on in this country, like the beginning of the rise of incarceration, mass incarceration. There's a timeline to look at. And again, you're going to learn through this academy with our dean and others that he'll bring here to tell the story, to understand what has happened even across the timeline, to really understand maternal child health. And so when you talk about building fatherhood, what many have already learned, and you know already, it's about fathers of color, poor fathers, Black fathers. And Frederick Douglass said, it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. So many elements to our program is how do we restore men and fathers and bring them to a place where they can feel adequate and to be engaged. And so with 85 years of maternal child health, we've also had the fatherhood movement and work over 30 years, which you're going to learn about in a more detailed way versus a different type of offering. The academy is really about getting deeper understanding of fatherhood. And so 30 years of fatherhood, what has really gone on there? And our dean is going to take us through that. So again, we're going to look at that timeline there. But 20th century fatherhood, when fatherhood started, there's a story from there, and how it looks today in the 21st century is very different. It's expanded. It's an ecological model. It looks at deeper things, and again, context of fathers and context of family, of mothers, of community. It's really important to understand this change and shift in what we see with fatherhood in the 21st century versus the 20th. And again, we have a history, 30 years of history of Healthy Start to help tell that story, but we will go deeper, and the dean will take us through that understanding. And it's important as we think about our future and where is fatherhood headed over the next 10 years, if you will. So look back and look at Healthy Start from 1991 to what we're doing now. And again, this is the first time fatherhood is a required component. So as we look at infants, children, and mothers, we now, of course, are focusing on fathers, and we know fathers matter. And your data that you collect, which you'll talk about in this academy, what types of data, it's not traditional data, but what kind of data, what type of evaluation you need in place, that's going to be covered. And the reason we need to do this, because still today, too many babies die before their first birthday. Low birth weight continues to be the leading cause. And then we have preterm birth, preterm deliveries. There's so much going on that causing women to go into early labor. There's other issues of babies born too early. So it's still the same 30 years later, too many, too small, too soon. And it's important to understand that in the fatherhood work, where you can say, we do fatherhood because, again, too many babies are still dying before their first birthday, not having access to both parents and the support systems that we can build around children. And again, in 2021, the disparities remain. The infant mortality disparities are there. The Black maternal mortality disparities are still there. So that's why we need to turn up the heat on the fatherhood work. And so when we talk about inclusion, and Ken and I talk about this a lot, before you can do anything, before it can be substantial and counted, you need to make dads count. And so again, with the country's Maternal Child Health Bureau, having father as a required component is huge. And so resources are dedicated to father inclusion. 101 sites allowed to hire male fatherhood coordinators and focus on work there. It's a required component, and the expectation is really to integrate and serve at least 100 fathers or partners a year. This is significant because in order to really be committed to fatherhood, there had to be this commitment to dedicating resources, and that's what we see with the 101 programs now. Having fatherhood as a required component, and 101 responded in a NOFO, that you had a plan, that you have a vision and a mission for your fatherhood work as a local program. And again, we always emphasize the need for you to build your community action networks. That has been the hallmark of Healthy Start for 30 years. That is why we're able to serve families in a more complete way, because any services that you can't provide, your partners at that community action network level helps provide other services that people need. And we know fathers have a lot of need, a lot of services, and many of the Healthy Start programs cannot serve all those needs, but certainly you need to build partnerships with your community action network to make sure men get what they need while they're participating in your program. And so Ken and I always emphasize, make sure you're building capacity at your community action network to support the fathers that are coming to your program. And we think about this continuum of care for mothers from preconception to motherhood. We wanted to also emphasize again today that paternal involvement, what he does with preconception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, what is his involvement? And that's a helpful way of thinking about ways to actually concretely engage and involve fathers along this continuum. And then when it comes to fatherhood, the whole paternal health and parenting is another piece. But before, during, after, and beyond are kind of the 4 words you can remember that takes you across that continuum. But think of his involvement and connection from preconception, pregnancy, birth, postnatal, etc. This is what we like you to keep in mind as we talk about this. And we think about the services then, what kind of services, and you all are already beginning to build out the types of services as a program that you can offer when men get connected to your Healthy Start program. So if he comes in through prenatal, you're talking with him, meeting with him at those clinic visits along with her. What you're giving to her, you're giving to him. So you have this prenatal connection, a point of connection there. And then if you're doing outreach and care coordination, case management, health education, training, and home visiting programs, if those are types of programs you have, then where does he connect there? When do you engage fathers? And so again, if it's through your outreach and recruitment, you have strategies already in place for pregnant mom, well, what is your outreach and recruitment strategy for engaging dads as well? So again, thinking about his point of entry along your continuum of care in your program is the way you begin to plug men in and really prepare how you want to engage him across that continuum. And as we've said earlier, it's important to understand there are other areas of support services that he needs. And if you can't provide these, then you also working with partners to then connect him to your partners to get some of these other needs met that he has. And so again, it's important as he's engaged in your program, he also most likely is engaged with other services that he's getting through his community, through your help. And so I'm going to go into the core adaptive model for father that we developed for the National Health and Start Association, and certainly want to give acknowledgement to Deborah Frazier and her work and really pushing fatherhood from the National Healthy Start perspective. And Deborah, Ken, and I got a chance to work with her and really developing this core adaptive model for fatherhood. I know our dean is going to be doing some great work acknowledging women in this work, and there's a role for everyone. And I think, again, this academy is going to talk about that. Who were the people that really helped push us to be where we are today in fatherhood? And so it's important to acknowledge that leadership. And so certainly want to give honor to Deborah and her leadership. And again, you all know Ken, who works with us at the TA and Support Center as a consultant with the association, but he and I, again, co-created this core adaptive model for fatherhood. And I'm going to share some highlights from that for you as well today. We begin with like definitions of fatherhood. That kind of dictionary definition, the state or responsibility of being a father, is also a term that's referenced to describe the movement that looks at a program and efforts to focus on fathers and their impact. And so fatherhood is the state of embracing being a father or a parent. Another way of saying is fatherhood is an execution on a practice. And so we're teaching people about the practice of fatherhood within family or community that's really rooted in a commitment to core values, practices, and principles, grounded in the beliefs that support and ground that nurturance of children across a life course that includes cultivating and providing a healthy environment of love, support, and guidance that protects them from factors that threaten their health and well-being. We consider this a real complete and thorough definition based on what happens within fatherhood and within a program. It's really having this commitment to these values, practices. It's really understanding his impact and the outcomes you want for children. It's also looking across the life course. So that's a very complete definition. And then lastly, fatherhood is a protective factor over children and family given by a man that provides shelter, protection, and a healthy, loving environment which a child would be nurtured to grow into adulthood. So these are helpful just to think about how do we define fatherhood? And again, based on what we've learned over these decades, it's really a comprehensive definition that we have. It's not just about him, it's him in context of her, the pregnancy, to the baby, to community. It's just more expansive than it ever has been. Healthy Start provides male involvement father program, providing these opportunities for men to really engage, as we said, in the well-being of children, supporting these relationships, and then providing that opportunity for them to become self-sufficient and economically stable. And programs that have grown across the country, programs like Joe Jones's programs in Baltimore, focuses on workforce development. So we have seen this evolution to a point where now we have agencies that are more responsive to the needs of fathers. And again, what we've learned is important that really focus on his health, because if he's not healthy, he will not be able to make those positive contributions that you want across that continuum of care. So again, men's health is really critical. And so there's a breadth and depth to the fatherhood work, and you're going to hear about that. What you do with an individual father is very different from what your organization do, what community does, and how we view these fathers. So we talk a lot about the breadth and then the depth. And so the depth has to do with what do we believe about fathers? What does a father believe about himself? What values that he has? What values do we have as a program? How do we think about engaging fathers? How do fathers themselves think about being engaged? And so we can help in those areas. Then what they do, what a man does, a father does, will be different if he has a belief that he matters. What programs will do better is if they believe fathers matter. So that's kind of where we are on the breadth and think about a program. But part of what you're doing today is really getting into the depth and understanding the depths of fatherhood so that we can really advance the agenda. And we talk about the breadth, we're talking, asking questions like, what does your program look like now, right? How does it function? How are men really included in your MCH program? And are they getting services? And how are they getting those services? And how does your program really engage these men? And what types of data is being collected? As well, are you evaluating and measuring impact? These are important questions as you think about the breadth of what we're up to. And then the deeper questions, just a few questions to think about. But one is, what is the impact on birth outcomes for mothers and infants? And so again, right there, we can show fatherhood matters and start looking at birth outcomes now with him in mind. How has he influenced? Was he partnered with her in the pregnancy, coming to all of the prenatal visits, and did she have a healthy birth outcome? Can you show there's a connection between his support during the pregnancy and that healthy birth outcome? So making those types of connections in birth outcomes and infant outcomes is really important. Is there impact on the life of the mother before, during, after, and beyond pregnancy? So working with her and talking with her, understanding from her what his involvement, the value of his involvement with her. She feels more supported. She's getting to the visits because he actually is dropping her off. She doesn't have to take, a train, bus and train to get there. He's at home with the other kids while she comes to her visit. So ways that he's showing up and supporting her and getting her care. These are things to think about on a deeper level when it comes to looking at outcomes. And again, how is he connected and involved with the infant? So making those early connections. And again, the research lets us know connecting him early, the chances increase for him staying connected throughout the pregnancy, but certainly throughout the early years of a child's life. And then really looking at those child outcomes, right? Because again, 5 years of Healthy Start, we have a 4 or 5-year-old now. Are they ready to learn? So you're engaged in some very important work. And again, CAM was a model that was based on evidence-based practice, promising practice, and practice that's promising. And so that's a term that comes from Deborah herself. She said there's a lot of great things, innovative things that Healthy Start programs do that we have to lift up. And so that's always going to be the case. What are you doing right now, and how is it making a difference? And how can we apply some science to that and lift it up so that it also becomes a promising or evidence-based practice? So again, if you're doing things that work, it's important to share those things. So this was all about laying the foundation. We did research with the Healthy Start community overall. The association engaged the entire Healthy Start community through one of its annual meetings, where we actually did research with Healthy Start programs, and they published an article, The Community Perspective on the Role of Fathers During Pregnancy. So this comes from the community themselves, community of mothers and fathers, clinicians, and those working with dads. It was a qualitative study, and it was fascinating to work with our Healthy Start communities. And then also we've done research around men's health and work closely with the Men's Health Network. So again, the model says men's health is critical to successful father engagement. So the core adaptive model for fatherhood, it offers these 3 levels of adaptable service components or models and that we are able to go through. It is built around these core elements, some key objectives and measures. Again, how do we tell the story collectively about the Healthy Start fatherhood work? We didn't know to do this in the beginning of the Healthy Start program itself. And so it's challenging to talk about core elements of Healthy Start. You have 101 programs, but certainly as we build this fatherhood work, we want to make sure we build it together. And so again, Ken and I identified these core elements that we see again in over 150 programs. And then we just developed a comprehensive plan that if you want it, the training will kind of bring you to a place where you can actually create a roadmap for your fatherhood work if you are ready. So that's a little bit about the CAM. It's again based on this kind of life course approach, which we've learned from Healthy Start. Life course is important. So again, the research let us know the importance of father and fatherhood. We also know the impact of fatherlessness as we work with other national groups. And so we have all of that information that has gone into the design. And just as we've been working with mothers, we see it was important to look at life course, the same thing with fatherhood. So many of you are going into the depths where you're working with fathers around going back to manhood, and then you focus on work with young boys, as you see from the work that the National Healthy Start Association does with its summit on men and boys, because again, it's a life course perspective. So that's part of the model. And as you think about what it looks like before, during, after, and beyond, here is a piece from the model that shows you on an individual level working with dads preconceptionally, prenatal care, and then during, like, what is their role during pregnancy? How is he support to her, and what type of attachments are being made there, and then his health. And then we get to the after phase, again, more on his role and responsibility. When there comes to reproductive life planning, is he now a part of those planning? Are they doing co-parenting? So you're able to really document his involvement along the life course. And then beyond, more on his role and responsibility, and that's childcare, transportation, support, economic support to the family. There are different ways you describe his involvement there. And on a program level, just some of the other things are listed there that you would focus on across the course. So during, what kind of service, what are services for her? What services are you giving him? How is he including your overall program? So from a programmatic level, you really think a little bit differently each of those stages as well. But that is what the model looks like before, during, after, and beyond, and really being able to show where is he showing up and what is his value add. And then of course, how is it connected to your outcomes? So you think of before, during, after, and beyond, understanding that men's health is critical. It's really about promoting father involvement and then improving parenting or co-parenting in the latter stages. So again, that's part of what the model has said. And this is something we went over in the Building a Successful Father program. And if you have not attended that training or accessed that training through the Healthy Start Epic website, please do so, because Ken and I spend a lot of time going over what it looks like. So making the connection to fathers and then that engagement. And Ken did a great job when we talk about before, during, after, and beyond. Then we look at that dad. It's across the life cycle, it's specific services, that work in life, and then the support network. And so again, we're pretty thorough in what it looks like to make those connections. And so to help look at that a little better, when you think of the father, again, when I talked about those 9 core elements around father's need based on those 100 and a review of those programs, these are the things, the 9 things that showed up most consistently. Relationship with mother of the child, education, something about his education, employment was huge, family and friends, so that support network, access to social services, criminal justice support, enforcement, housing. These were the common issues that came up when it came to working with fathers. And so we've identified those 9 core areas. When you think about at a program level, so if you're building a program around him, then these are the 9 core areas you need to think about. He's going to need support around outreach and case management, the whole education and training piece, the job training and employment, the support piece, his health, housing. Those are areas that you most likely will need to work with these fathers that we're talking about, really low income fathers, poor fathers, many fathers of color that may have other issues. These are those 9 core areas you want to look at. And as you build your case management plans, most likely they're going to include things from these areas. And so as a community, you think about, here's a father with all of his needs around him. We have to support him there, and then want to build a program around him and his needs, and then really build that community support. So agencies that you might be working with that provide those deeper services that you as a Healthy Start program cannot provide, but make sure you have these folks that are working part of that community network. So as you're supporting him around his needs, and you, as a program, you're surrounding him, and then you're making the connections at the community level. That's why that community action network, the Healthy Start model, is perfect to do this type of fatherhood work, because it really building that community to support him and supporting the needs that he may have is going to contribute to him being a stronger contributor. So as I wrap up, think about your Healthy Start, your 4 approaches. And when it comes to fatherhood, recruiting fathers in your program, outreaching to them, how you enroll dads, the services that you provide to dad, and then what does partner engagement look like? So across the 4 approaches, to be able to describe that. And then when you think of those benchmarks, specific benchmarks associated with him, really describing, you'll end up describing his involvement during pregnancy, participation in pediatric appointments, right? Reading by a parent or family member. These are those benchmarks that have been identified, but there are other ways to also talk about his involvement and other benchmarks that you also can mention him in. We push you back to that original NOFO. Again, there are other ways that you've already answered how your program is identifying these partners, right? You've talked about curricula that you're using. You've talked about models that you're using within your program. So all of this is important in telling your Healthy Start story about fatherhood. And again, we go over these benchmarks all of the time. And so I like this quote from Ken Scarborough, and he says, the level of father involvement in MCH space means different things to different people. And that is so true. And that's why being a part of an academy like this is going to be helpful. So we have expand our understanding from each other. So as you look at all of the benchmarks, spend time in your project thinking about how else can dads help with the other benchmarks as well, and not just focus on the three, because there are other areas for breastfeeding, for example. And I know Wesley Bug and Robe and Rose are really connected with the work that we're doing. But again, breastfeeding is a really important area, but that's going to help meet some of the other benchmarks. So fatherhood involvement within MCH actually can influence more than just the three benchmarks. So again, spend time really examining those benchmarks and seeing really what you want to do around fatherhood. So at the end of the day, Healthy Start programs will be able to tell the story of how fathers support pregnancy, how they contribute to better birth outcomes, and then creating optimum opportunities for infants to thrive. And so the role of fathers with MCH, that's what you're a part of. This academy is going to help us really understand where we've been and what we have the power to do now and take us into the future. Again, I say this a lot. I know that we're going to talk about it over the academy, but we also are doing fatherhood in the age of mass incarceration. So what does that look like when many men in our communities across the country are living under those three shadows of prison, probation, or parole? And really, what does that mean when you come out, and how do you really get about in community? So we can't continue to do this work without acknowledging that, because each of the communities where you are, there's a story around incarceration that needs to be lifted up. But Healthy Start will be able to tell this story of what fatherhood looks like within an MCH framework. And it's an exciting opportunity that all of you are engaged in, because fatherhood matters, and you will be able to demonstrate how it does matter within Healthy Start. So again, this opportunity of talking about 10,000 to 30,000 dads a year across the country is pretty exciting to even think about the Healthy Start program. So again, we're excited to offer the Fatherhood Learning Academy to you. I'm really excited to introduce you to Dr. Johnson, who is not just Dr. Johnson, but he will be your dean, taking you through the next few months. And if you have any needs around TA, we'll mention it often, but we're here at the TA and Support Center. Also, Ken works with us through the National Healthy Start Association. We're standing ready to support you in any way that we can. And so this time, I want to go ahead and just pause and introduce Dr. Johnson as your dean. And again, this is an academy. So when I say as the dean, I want you to think of him as your dean. So you are now students, and you're in welcome to the Fatherhood Learning Academy. And again, I'm happy to introduce Dean Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, who many of you know is the president and CEO of the National Partnership for Community Leadership, we know as NPCL, whose mission it is to strengthen the service capacity of public and private agencies to empower low-income parents and youth through innovative training techniques, practical program management tools, and evidence-based practices. So as the president, he has overseen the planning and implementation of two of the nation's most significant social welfare research projects involving low-income men and fathers. So since 1997, under Dr. Johnson's leadership, NPCL has convened an annual International Fatherhood Conference that attracts policymakers, family practitioners, and parents worldwide. And I remember being at the first one and all the early ones and the last few. He is also a visionary and National Planning Committee chair for 100th anniversary of Father's Day. Dr. Johnson also presided over the National Youth Development Practitioners Institute for Development of Labor Youth Opportunities Unlimited program. As particular focus of Dr. Johnson's work has been on the plight of low-income men and fathers. He has written numerous curriculum, articles, and publications. He played a principal role in the passage of the first national fatherhood legislation in Congress, the Fathers Count Bill in 1999. So we have the right dean that's been around, that's helped create the history that we'll learn about. And this legislation provided the framework for the first federal funding of fatherhood programs. So some of the history that you're going to get in this academy, he created some of the history and certainly has worked with many of those leading pioneers that have helped shape fatherhood work. And so again, it's a blessing to have him. He's married, has 4 children and grandchildren. He's received his formal education at the University of Michigan and received his Bachelor of Arts and Master of Arts and Doctorate in Philosophy and Secondary School Administration and Urban Education. He is a mentor, a colleague, a friend. I am so proud of the work that he has done and proud to be part of that work, and certainly proud to introduce Dr. Jeffrey Johnson as your Fatherhood Learning Academy Dean over the next few months. Dr. Johnson, I hand it off to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Ken, for that generous introduction. I just want to compliment you again on all the work that you've done over the last, almost 3 decades, on behalf of Healthy Start and what you're doing with NICSQ right now. It is historical, it's monumental, it's needed, and I'm just proud to be alongside with you in making this this Fatherhood Learning Academy a reality. This is something that I believe is needed in every federal initiative that works with fatherhood. You need a basis where folks are getting consistent evidence-based information that's going to enable them to not only be successful in their programs, but also to see getting into this work as a successful career. This is a career work, and we hope out of all of you who are attending the Learning Academy over the next several months, that some of you will get that bug that Ken and I have gotten in being in this work and stay in this work. It's interesting that I have to start there, because on the other side of the ledger, on the human side, when it comes to the first line workers or fatherhood coordinators that we're calling in Healthy Start, do you know that the turnover rate is 70%? Let me say that one more time. 7 of 10 who begin their work in these programs as fatherhood coordinators leave within a year to 14 months. And I think it's primarily because folks are entering it and don't see it as a career. And also, I think that there's a real issue in going through that whole system change and getting a lot of organizations and agencies who've been used to work with moms and children to feel comfortable and to create the environmental conditions that make it friendly for fathers. And that's what Healthy Start's been trying to do, Maternal Child Health is trying to do. And what we're going to be doing through this Learning Academy is giving you the history of this work. We're going to build on many of the things that Ken talked about in the core adaptive model. That's our vision. The vision of our Learning Academy is what Ken just laid out. And it's just a matter of how do we structure it in such a way through your learning and through your knowledge to help all of us make this successful in reaching the benchmarks and the outcomes that have been set up for maternal health and child health and Healthy Start. And so I just appreciate the opportunity. I'm excited. Y'all know, I know many of you, I've met many of you through some of the curriculum training that we've done. This is not curriculum training. This is more or less an academic course. The only difference is that you won't be graded, but you will be expected to learn all of this information and apply it to your work. It's about your growth. It's about your maturity in the work, and it's about your ability to be able to call upon these different events, people, circumstances, organizations that's going to enable you to have all the tools you need to be as successful as you want to be. And that you could be successful as you want to be because there have been success stories, and we're building on success stories, and we're going to look at you as being the vanguard, particularly on the maternal health side, child health part of the ledger, is showing how fatherhood can be integrated and can be seen as a fundamental service provided through the Healthy Start programs. That's what we're after. It's about the integration. And when we say integration within a system that's been really focused on the mother-child dyad, we're talking about systems reform. It's interesting, Ken, when you mentioned that statistic going back to 1935, our aid-dependent children program was also tied to our Social Security program for aid to dependent children. But here's the interesting thing, and I think it has a relationship to do also with why a lot of these other federal programs are slow in coming on the fatherhood issue. The whole focus of the initial programs coming out of Title 4A was built on the premise of what was learned prior to in the nonprofit community in what they call these women's pension societies. And what were these women's pension societies? They were societies that supported women whose husbands didn't come home from World War I. They didn't come home. And so for years, they had these pensions given it to the mothers, these widows, so that they would have to put their children up for adoption. Right. And so the way you prevent your children from going up in adoption is not keeping them in poverty. And so this was the response. And so when Francis Perkins and Franklin Delano Roosevelt got together, they created the Aid to Dependent Children's Program, focused on mom and child, because here it is. Here's the crown jewel point. They set it up on the basis that the father was dead. He was not there. So why would you create a family support program if the father's not there? We know through the work that we do, and I'm sure many of you who work in these programs, you've seen these fathers bring these mothers to the Healthy Start program. And like Charles Ballard found back in 1979, they're waiting outside. They've been waiting outside, waiting to come in. But when they come in and you find out what their vision is for themselves and their children, we find that in many respects, they don't have all the equipment and the tools to do that. And what we got to do is one, ground them in support of mom so she can have a healthy baby. And at the same time, help him think through who he wants to be as a father in such a way that he can provide support for her during the pregnancy period and after the pregnancy period. And as Ken has said so eloquently, throughout the life course. Throughout the life course, these fathers are there. And it's how do we work with them and enable them to be the best dad they can be under their circumstances. And that's what we're trying to do. If we can do that, we got them. And once we get them in, we want them to be of support to themselves. It's just like when you're in an airplane, when you go up in the air and they give you all these instructions, they said that if something happens, where the plane is going down and the mask come down, what we want you to do, you ready for this? Put your mask on first. So we are helping these dads put their mask on first so they could be able to support their children, because if he can't help himself, he's going to be little used to mom and little used to the child. And this is all about the future of our children. If anybody asks you about what this academy is all about, it's about the future of our children. And the way we are getting at it is by focusing on fathers and learning all we can about fathers, about the policies, about the practice, about the research, and how we can effectively implement these programs to meet all those wonderful goals and objectives that Ken has so well articulated. I'm excited. Can't you tell? I'm ready to go. Next slide, please. So again, I'm repeating some of the things that were said before, but I want to kind of put my spin on it, and that is to better understand how fatherhood can be integrated into the maternal and child health practices. It's about the integration. It's systems reform. It's systems reform. For those of you who are used to and like to and are comfortable working with women and children, I'm going to ask you now to stretch. I'm going to ask you now to grow. I'm going to ask you now to look at the bigger picture, because there's a bigger picture out there when it comes to support for our children. It's the father, it's other supports. It may be family members. When fathers come to the table, they also bring their family. Those are supports to the children. That's a resource that we've not tapped into. And what I like to say to folks about fathers in pregnancy, fathers can hide pregnancy, mothers can't. All right, so they can hide it. And we want to get every father the reason to be open about the fact that he's a father, and he's an expected father, and he wants to be the best father he can be. And that through our support, because one of the things we've been doing through our curriculum training is really giving you some tools to help the father be the man he wants to be and to be the father he wants to be, so that he can engage, so he can do things, so he can live out that definition of fatherhood that Ken laid out so beautifully. Learn how policies have historically shaped fatherhood. Child support. Interesting about child support. Let me give you a little bit of history. When child support was set up in the 1960s, it came out of the family courts. And the family courts essentially were trying to determine what was the best way to continue to support children when couples broke up. It was largely set up around divorcing cases, not necessarily the cases that we're dealing with. And so it was technically me getting married, and then me and my wife getting married, and then I'm deciding to leave, and I'm seen as the primary wage earner. And so the family courts basically decided that, Jeff, you can leave your family, but the money that you would have to support your children does not leave. Hence the child support program. That's what it started out as, and it became federal law in 1975. And that what we got to understand is that most of your public assistance programs have a relationship with public assistance going to children, as far as whoever the primary wage earner is, or whoever the paternity is established around, which is typically the father, is probably going to have to deal with child support. And so we got to understand the child support system, and we're going to bring in folks, you know, at the top of the heap who know all the ins and outs about child support to give you a comfort level. Let me tell you what I've asked them to do. I said, when you come in and talk to our academy, not only do I want you to talk to them about child support, I also want you to give them the connection of the child support person in their community, and actually make an introduction where those connections have not been made yet. Because when you have the federal office cooperating with you, and you can get that type of data. And he's already said, look, he said, no problem. He said, Doc, give me the 101 sites and I'll match them up. And if they want me to write a letter of introduction as a senior advisor, if from the commissioner, we'll send the commissioner say that you should work with this Healthy Start program. We support their goals. We support what they're trying to do. And we will work them in any way possible to make sure that dads and moms are playing a role in the life of their children. Listen, it don't get no better than that. But you got to understand the child support part. But also it's important to understand the incarceration part, because as Ken articulated, we are living in a period of mass incarceration. The challenges that we have is understanding the timing in which a lot of these incarcerated fathers will be released back into the community. You should know, statistically, they say that the majority of those in the 80th percentile of those in prisons are serving a sentence, you ready for this, of 3 years or less. Of 3 years or less, which means what? He's coming back home. He's coming back home, and we got to make sure that he's equipped to be able to engage with his child's mother and other support systems, so that he can be the dad that he wants to be and that we all want him to be. And so what I'm saying is that you can't escape the incarceration issue. You can't escape the criminal justice issue. A lot of the fathers that we're going to be working with, that's going to be showing up at your door, is probably had some contact with the criminal justice system. And that's a challenge. Why? Because some of these fathers are going to ask for your support to make a referral to them to a workforce development agency. And the workforce development agency is going to say, we want somebody who don't have an incarceration background. And what we want to be able to say is that we provided, hours of service to this father. He showed up every day. He showed up every day on time. He was punctual. He demonstrated a real positive attitude towards his children. And I've seen this guy over these period of weeks, and I think he's a better risk for you in getting a job than somebody who has not gone through a program like this. And so we're going to really, just understand what the issue is with incarceration, how we can help these incarcerated and then returning citizens be successful in their transition, and to support our goals and objectives with maternal and child health. We're going to also talk about, again, those tools that's going to equip you to be the successful program that you need to be. It's about data collection. It's about case management. For example, the only case management of your moms and children, you're going to have to now add dad to that. One of the things we want to share with you is that that a lot of Healthy Start programs, a lot of Head Start programs, they don't keep good records on the fathers. They don't keep good records. One, because they weren't required. They're required now. So you got to have some records when it comes to the fathers. But case management is important in the sense that we got to be able to track, father coming in, father going through the program, and then we want to and we make that referral. We're going to track that referral. We want to see what happened with that referral. And then we want to say, particularly against a job, we want to see how long he stayed on that job, at least for 6 months to a year. That's good data coming back into the Healthy Start program if we can come up with the right tracking. But the whole idea of it is to begin to understand how to build a successful community-based program for fathers. And it's one, just like the Healthy Start program for mothers, it responds to her needs and the child's needs. The program also has to respond to his needs. And it has to be his needs because you can't assume that even though the father has a child in Healthy Start, that he and the mother are in a romantic relationship. You can't assume that, right? But you want him involved in the life of his child. as long as there's no abuse or any other thing that restrains him from being involved in the life of his child, we want them to work together, whether or not they're married or not. It's so important because that's the reality. 40% of all America's children are born out of wedlock. 40%. 75% of all African-American children are born out of wedlock. Let me say it another way, where the parents have never been married. All right. 55% of Latino children are born out of wedlock. Let me say it again, where the parents have never been married. Okay. And that's who's coming to your door. And we're not going to cast aspersions over that, but we're going to ask, in a very intentional way, is, do you want to support your children? Have you thought about how to support your children? Have you thought about how you can work together? And that's where co-parenting comes in, because what's going to be a key aspect of our work and work with fathers now and in the future is finally arrived, and it's co-parenting. Why? And it kind of goes back to all those things that Ken talked about in terms of protective factors and all those other issues. Why? Because if you understand, even in a spiritual sense, biblical sense, why it was so important to focus on on widows and orphans. You ready for this? Was covering, was making sure they're covered, to make sure they got food, shelter, water. Because in those days, women didn't have, couldn't own property. They couldn't, they were dependent totally on men. It was all about covering. And what we're talking about is making sure our children are covered, and that they're better covered by, two sets of parents who love them, two family households who love them, because you got two households here. You got a household where he lives in, you got a household that she lives in, but you got the support that's coming from both of their families, to bring to bear in support of that child, to provide the covering so they can grow and develop and reach their highest human potential. That's what this is all about. That's what this is about. That's why the fatherhood movement started. It was in response to the issue of leaving our children uncovered. And they languished in poverty. They languished in poor health outcomes. And what we're trying to do right now is to remedy that with a lot of these new things that we're finding out as we begin the work. And I think that what we'll find out as we try to equip you is that there are some practices out there that can give you the tools that you need to be the most effective program possible, and to learn how to evaluate. We're blessed, because over those years that I've been doing this work, first of all, y'all need to understand, for me, this is my purpose in life. I didn't always know what my purpose was. This is, and it's the place where I've had my most success, but I've also had a lot of challenges, and you're going to have that when you work with these fathers. Some of these fathers, I can tell you right now, and to move on where we want to go, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. But it's awakening them, keeping them in our system, and watching them grow in their maturity around accepting their responsibility and doing so voluntarily. We want fathers to get to the point when they complete your programs that they don't feel that they have completed the program under any coercion whatsoever, that they accept their responsibility for their fatherhood voluntarily, because they know that it's about giving of your heart, and giving yourself to your children is what makes parenting what it is. All right. Parents will give their lives for their children. Grandparents will give their lives for their grandchildren. And it's all about helping him get there. And if he wasn't there in the beginning, which is going to be the case, every case is going to be different. All right. But we should have those common set of things that we try to do with them, so that as we do try to do evaluation, we can do evaluation in a consistent way. See, this is not like the human side programs. Let me tell you the difference. The big thing about the human side programs, all the fatherhood programs they do are competitive programs, because they're competitive grant programs. All right. And so everybody don't have, an opportunity to do the same thing, because when they competed, they had to show what they were doing different. On this side of the board, you have an opportunity for everybody to do the same thing. When King goes out to a program, he should be able to see the consistency between the program in Baltimore and the program in Los Angeles, California, or Detroit. There should be some common things, because these are not programs competing against each other. These are programs trying to do the same thing. All right. And that's why Healthy Start is in a unique opportunity, unlike any other federal entity ever, because those folks who now are operating under the mandate of doing fatherhood, they don't have to compete to get a fatherhood program. Everybody gets the chance. And the question is, how fast can we grow you and mature you in such a way that fatherhood becomes part of your standard practice, and it's not seen as an add-on, but a substantial part of what you're trying to achieve in creating a healthy mom, a healthy baby, and a bright future for your children down the road. And we will give you my email address because, as Ken said, I'm the dean. You got to be in contact with me. It's no problem, and we'll communicate. I appreciate this opportunity so immensely because it gives us an opportunity, again, to pass on this knowledge to you so that you can continue to be a part of this ever-growing work, and to, again, for some of you to be a part of it for 30 years plus from where we are right now, as Ken and I are. Next slide, please. We're going to have some course readings. One of these readings is going to be Your Journey to Co-Parenting. It's a book that me and my wife, Monica, authored. My understanding is that each one of you who are interested will get a copy of that, from NITSQ. So make sure that you, before you get off the line today, when that prompt comes up, that you say you want to copy one of these books, because at the end of the day, that's what we got to head to. If that parent, those parents that you're working with are not married and won't intend to get married, we want to make sure, all right, that they understand the value and importance of co-parenting for their children. It's important for them, but it's more important for their children. Children are born with the right to have two loving parents, all right? And that happens when children are planned. But a lot of children and the parents that we're working with, they were unplanned. It's just a reality. Again, I'm not casting aspersions on, because what we try to do is make sure those children are covered. And that what we want to do is to help parents move towards a healthy relationship. All right. We hope our desires for that relationship to be fantastic. All right. But if it's functional, I'll take it. All right. But it's about how to be successful co-parents. It's interesting, for those of you who participated in the conference and saw my presentation on the book, we showed the story of this guy named Joel from Brooklyn. And Joel was saying, how he was a co-parent as an adult, never intended to be so, a co-parent. But he said when he was growing up in the hood, he said he had never heard of co-parenting, because co-parenting is not something that's talked about a lot in a lot of low-income, poor communities. Let me tell you why. Because his parents were never married. The fact that his parents were never married, because co-parenting is a decision that's generally made by a judge about what you got to do to support your kids in a divorce settlement. So if you've never been divorced, you can't have been divorced if you've never been married. So you would never have heard about co-parenting. And so what we're going to do is add to the culture of our work in a very substantial way for the very first time is co-parenting, so that people understand what it is, because it is something, it's not marriage. Married people co-parent. It's not to substitute, it's just to say that in those cases where parents, are not moving toward a marriage union, but they have children together, that there's an agreement that they can establish in an honor system. Let me tell you why you want to do it in an honor system. Because going back to the court process, whenever you go to court, you need to take a lawyer. All right, they say when you ever go to court, you need a lawyer to represent you. If you get a lawyer to represent you in the basic co-parenting agreement case, you know how much it is? About $5,000 to $10,000 to start. And I would ask you, how many of your Healthy Start mothers and fathers got $10,000 to help work out a co-parenting agreement? It's a lot of money, isn't it? And so what we've done is say, look, there's a way to approach this in an honor code way. And listen, it's not going to work in every instance. But in those instances where it does work, just think about how bright that child's future is going to be, that it not in terms of what it otherwise could have been, without it. Right? We really want to build co-parenting, the language of it, into the culture of our programs in such a way that both mothers and fathers see it as a value added to their child. Failing Our Fathers was written by one of the leaders in the fatherhood field, and it's going to be a homework assignment, by Dr. Ronald Mincy. And what it is, it's a compilation of policies, practices, and research that demonstrates how we failed our fathers. But let me tell you why I picked this out as a course reading, because I want you to read the stories. It has the stories. And I can just tell you some of the stories that you're going to read in that book, are stories that you're going to be dealing with in your program when it comes to dads. This next one, and I have sent copies to NITSQ of Turning the Corner on Father Absence, and also on the evaluative assessment. Those are going to be sent right out to you at some point, but we've made those available to you. And the reason why these are important, let me tell you about Turning the Corner. The Turning the Corner Father Absence report was the first time that all the elements of the fatherhood movement, the conservatives, the liberals, the black, the white, we all came together down at Morehouse. It was through a grant funded by the Ford Foundation. We had William Julius Wilson, we had all the top scholars or whatever. And what I want you to look at is that look at the report, but I want you to look at who all that was there. It was everybody you could think of in the history of fatherhood was right there, talking about how we work together. Now, things have not always turned out the way we envisioned them, but I just want you to, this was the document that Congress used, in their support of the Father's Counts bill that I was one of the principal folks involved in, but also it was one of the documents that influenced greatly the 2005 Deficit Reduction Act. Father Absence, you got to read it. You just got to have it in your library. If you don't read it, it's there. At some point, read it. And then this last document here is the value assessment. This was the first federally funded, private foundation funded evaluability assessment to determine whether or not a fatherhood program could be evaluated. All right. And I was very fortunate and happy to be a part of that evaluability assessment. And so we're going to make those things available to you. It's a class, y'all. Course readings. Here's where they are. I will let you know when I want you to come back and tell me something about these things. But this all in a way to help you grow in your understanding of fatherhood, which is going to make you more ready in being able to implement a successful program in your Healthy Start program. That's what it's all about. We want you to integrate it. We don't want you to see it as a tough thing to do. It's going to be difficult in some. And what's probably going to be the biggest challenge we have is just learning how to do some things different. Because a lot of us are so used to doing things a certain way, we just comfortable. We don't want to change. But in order to do some of this work, you have to change. You have to expand. I like the word expand and grow as opposed to change. It's more palatable. But what we're trying to do is get you in the mindset and the framework about fatherhood. And my job as dean is to make sure you have the very best knowledge available to us, not only in the United States, but in the world, and also to put in front of you the most brightest minds, the most sincere and dedicated people who's been doing this work on the policy research practice side that we have available to us in America to influence your thinking and your decision making now and in the future about what you think about fathers, what you think about them in the maternal child health context, and how those things are being integrated into your practices that makes you the most successful fatherhood program in the network. Next slide, please. So here's our Learning Academy topics. Again, you got Ken and I today. Next time we come together, we're going to talk about implementing a fatherhood program. We're just going to take our time. This is a 10-hour course. It's 10 hours. All right. And so we're going to take our time and we're going to unpack this stuff, and it's going to be interactive. We're doing a lot of talking today, but it's going to be interactive. There's going to be a lot of expectation that you be interactive throughout this process. And we're going to when we talk about implementing, we're talking about case management. We're talking about those partners, that community action network. How we got to draw up on those partners to do our work. You can't do this work by yourself. Nor is there expectation that you're going to be providing all these services directly in your Healthy Start program. You have to refer those things out. But you're going to have to set those partnerships up. You're going to have to educate people on what you're doing. You're going to have to bring them down, let them see the fathers in the program so they can see you got real fathers, who got a real heart for being in their lives of their kids. All right. Let me tell you what one network did. We were operating on a grant from the Annie Casey Foundation out of Seattle. And I worked on a project where we had to train 20 communities throughout the state of Virginia to do fatherhood work. And let me tell you what they did with all their community partners. They trained all of them in the fatherhood work curriculum as a way of grounding them and understanding how to do that. And so each site would report out how many community folks they had trained about their program, and why that group then became one of their partners. But you want them to come out to see what you're doing. If they want to sit on some of the stuff, that's fine, because you want something from them. It's an exchange process. All right, it's an exchange process. And I can tell you, most community partners will love the fact that you're focused on the future of our children, and they will love the fact that they're helping the family, whether or not they're married or not, by supporting the fathers. Then we're going to talk about managing data and program evaluations. These things are important because these are the things that enable Ken and others to go back and to say, this was a good investment in maternal child health. We need to grow this. We appreciate the resources right now, and we need more. All right, resources to help our programs do even more, so we can keep it in shop and not necessarily farm everything out. We want to move in the direction of some of these folks who it took 20 for Joe Jones to be where he is. I've known Joe Jones when he was in Healthy Start. Matter of fact, the first training Joe went through on fatherhood was with me. All right, and that it took Joe 25 years to be who he is right now. All right, and that's why I say don't think you're gonna be something like Joe Jones overnight. But you don't need to be. What you need to do is grow yourself in that direction. But I can tell you, it's not going to take you 25 years. That's taking Joe, because we know more now, and you don't have to, do all those things. You don't have to do all those things. You know what I mean? And so the body of knowledge is out there right now. We got 4 decades of knowledge of fatherhood. You don't need to reinvent nothing. What we're going to try to do through the academy is just let you know what that stuff is, and so that you'll know where to go get it. Okay, child support. We're gonna spend a whole session on child support, because a lot of you guys, because the fact that it's a Healthy Start program and as a public assistance, right? If the guy is not married, child support. And we're gonna bring in one of the leaders in child support. I talked to we're gonna bring somebody in from the operations side of child support. I've also talked to my good friend Dr. Ronald Mincy. I talked to him yesterday, and I said, look. I know you're going through this thing, you got a busy calendar. I said, we got this academy going. I said, you are one of the leading experts in terms of how child support affects low-income men of color. I said, hey, I came to your first class at Columbia when you started doing fatherhood. I said, you got to come to our class. He said, you got me. All right. So we're going to bring in, again, these are the brightest minds. These are the folks who are, they're solution oriented. So they ain't gonna be just giving you pie in the sky stuff. They're gonna say, this is what it is, and this is how you fix it. All right, this is how you fix it. This is how you make child support something that fathers that will come through your program not run away from, but be proactive towards. And then we're gonna have our 5th session on diversity. There's a lot of diversity in the fatherhood field. We got Native American fathers. We got incarcerated returning citizen fathers. We got rural fathers. And guess what? We got mothers, all right, who are now becoming aware for the first time of the significance of fathers, because nobody's never talked to her about the significance of fathers. And she's been looking at it from the standpoint of her own individual relationship, which is a very limited perspective. But we want to hear and see how we are working with mothers and how women, as Ken said earlier, we're going to be, talking about women who have been leaders in the fatherhood field from the very beginning. We talk all about Charles Ballard and how he started at the community-based level, but I can tell you what, I know his wife, Frances, and Charles would not have been able to do what he did without Frances. And she is the bomb. She understands all this stuff too. And had it not been for her, he wouldn't have been able to do the stuff he's doing. Just like when it came to me writing that book for parenting, I looked and my wife said, look, we did this thing together. You know what I said? Yes, dear. All right. All right. And if folks would say, I'm a smart man. Yes. Happy wife, happy life. So we just we gotta have some fun too. But those are our topics. We're also going to have an opportunity for you to do a special project at the end. We'll talk about that later. I just want you to know, what our plan was moving ahead. We're excited. we're gonna, give you the information you need to be, very successful. Next slide, please. Okay. One of the things we're gonna do, we're gonna break you up. This is a big group. We got 40 some of you all today. The registration said it's about 71 of you. And what we're gonna do, it's a big group, and we want you to kind of develop rapport and camaraderie. And so we're going to break you down into groups, and we're going to have groups. We're going to have 4 groups today. Okay. And it's going to be 8 persons per group. And what I want you to do when you get into your groups, begin that whole collaboration process, because one of the things that we're going to emphasize in the Academy is what a resource that other programs within the Healthy Start Network can be to you in your fatherhood work. And we want to create this community of learning, where there's peer-to-peer learning, where, some of you are more mature in fatherhood, can help some of the ones who are less mature, but some of the less mature ones may be doing some interesting things that some of the mature folks don't. But we want you to share it with one another. So when you begin your group, I want you to do several things. One, I want you to introduce yourself, and I want you to share your email address. And if you are up to it, share your cell phone number, because these are going to be the people throughout the next 6 sessions that you're going to be in a group with. So every time you break into groups, this is your group. So get to know each other. All right. And I want you to give yourself a group name when we break you out in the group. Then I want you to choose a note taker. Someone who could be the spokesperson. That spokesperson may be who you say is the team leader, only in the fact of organization, because all of you are leaders, but you might want to identify who's a team leader. But that team leader, can be someone who can make sure that offline that y'all continue to communicate, that y'all do your homework assignments, and so that when we come back together each month, the first 30 minutes of every session, we're going to talk about the homework assignment. All right. And I'm going to give everybody a homework assignment. But what you're not going to know is who I'm going to call on to report out on that homework assignment. All right. So that means that everybody got to do their work. I had to do it too. When I was in graduate school, I tell you, when I was working on my doctorate degree, they told me I had to learn 25 different areas related to school administration and urban education, 25 different areas for my preliminary examinations. But here was the study point. They said, you don't know which area that we're going to ask you on the prelim. So you got to know all of them. All right. And I tell you, since there have been people before me who had learned how to do it in a systemized way, a study way, that's what I did. So when I showed up, I showed up and I had all 25 areas in my head. All right. And they only asked me about 5. All right. And then let me tell you what the guy, one of my professors asked me after I got through my preliminary examination, before I even got my grade. You know what he asked? You know what he said, Kim? And this is the question I'm going to ask you all. He said, do you feel competent? I said, yeah. You know what I mean? Because I got all these 25 areas that you asked me to look at. You only asked me about 5. I feel like I got more to offer. And that's what I want y'all to think about. Y'all gonna have more to offer. I'm gonna put so much out there that, you're just gonna learn it. But it's going to be so beneficial because the technique I'm going to use, there's no way you're going to forget it, and you're going to remember it. It's going to be in your toolbox. Okay.
And Jeff, I like that too, because that's building that confidence. So you had confidence that you had this information, this knowledge. And so I think that's important as they're doing this work too, to have that confidence in what you're doing.
Exactly. So. It's just so critical, again, because we're trying to, this is a revolution. All right, this is a revolution. I'm going to use term revolution. This ain't no rebellion. This is a revolution. All right, because we're changing stuff. We're changing stuff. And this work is transformational. It's transformational for you. It's transformational for the father. It's transformational for the mother. It's going to be transformational for the child. Because again, we're doing things that are vitally necessary to lay the groundwork for this child to be successful during the pregnancy, while they're in the womb.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna call you Monday because I don't know how to go down the court.
Okay. So what we're gonna do, you see what your group assignments are, and what I'm gonna do when you go into your breakout group, you've also been assigned a person's name, some legislation, an organization, or a court decision that has impact and it was a significant contribution in the fatherhood field. And I want every group will have at least one to do today. And I want you to do that when you break out, whatever that name is. For example, let me give you an example. If you get Dr. Wade Horn's name, for example, I want you to have your cell phones available to you. You want you to do a Google search. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to put Dr. Wade Horn and fatherhood in your search engine. And then I want you to look at what's available about Dr. Horn and then come together on 3 or 4 sentences that is a way of describing not only who Dr. Horn is, but what his contribution was in the fatherhood field. All right? The same is true, say, for a court decision. I want you to put, for example, Turner versus Rogers. Turner versus Rogers, then I want you to put that in your search engine and fatherhood. That's what I want you to do. All right? And it's going to come up, and it's going to tell you what Turner versus Rogers was, and it's going to tell you what significance it is to fatherhood. And I want you to come back in about 15 minutes and report out. It's just practice session, you know, because every group will be given the assignment. I'm gonna give you the whole list. It's about 20 different people, names, organizations, legislation, court decisions that influence fatherhood. So the next time we come back at the end of August, we're gonna start out every session, 30 minutes debriefing on our homework. Here's the thing, here's the teaching point. No group is gonna know who I'm gonna call on. All right, I may call on one of you, I may call on 2 of you or whatever, all right? And so that means that everybody gotta know everything, all right? And I guarantee you, it's gonna sharpen your focus. And Ken, I tell you, within a month's time, everybody in this academy will know a lot about the history of the fatherhood movement. Because that was, you know, we said we're gonna examine the breadth, depth of the fatherhood movement in the 20th and 21st century. Deeply exploring the policies and practices that have influenced fatherhood programming that has either encouraged or impeded father engagement. That's how we're going to do it. We're going to do it through our homework assignment. We don't need to spend a whole class on it. But in your individual work groups, y'all going to discover that. And I tell you, it's going to be illumination. It's going to be illumination. And so with that, Lisa, let's break them out into groups. What time is it? It is
3:34.
So give them 10 minutes in the group.
Yep.
10 minutes, everybody knows what to do. I told you, whatever name you got or event you got or organization, just put that and fatherhood in your Google search and it'll come right up. I did it, I tested it out already, so don't come back and tell me I couldn't find it. I've already done it. You should be able to do it, all right? Lisa, let's break them out for 10 minutes and then we'll bring them back.
Great. Your assignments are in the chat box as well as the document that you can use. And I will now open the rooms and you'll be automatically directed into them. We'll go ahead and open up it now.
All right.
Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. And so we're just gonna, so you get an idea of what your homework assignment is gonna be like. All right, everybody's gonna do the homework assignment. All right, y'all decide what the division of labor is gonna be amongst your group. But the next time we meet on August 24th, know that when we start, we're gonna go through this this homework assignment that all of you are gonna get. That we've done a sample session of today with your group. Okay. And let me start with group number 3. Group number 3, have you identified your name of the group? Who's the spokesperson for group number 3? Unmute yourself. Group number 3.
Is that, I'm not sure if that's our group.
Okay, go get Tim. Okay.
Okay. We did not get, that's one thing we did not get is their name. I'm sorry, we failed that.
Okay, so next when you come back on the 24th,
we'll have a name.
All right. And whose name did you get off the list to look up?
We have stop for a second, let me get my notes here. David Blankenhorn.
Oh, David Blankenhorn. So tell everybody who David Blankenhorn was, just so we know who he is in the fatherhood movement. Go.
Well,
Tim.
he was very a proponent speaking out against the fatherless, and it looks like also, I mean, he wrote a book about that as well. And man, some really good quotes out of the book. Looks like we'll have to get it and read it. He's also chairman for National Fatherhood Initiative (NFI) as well.
Right.
And so,
he was one of the founding chair as well. David Bell was the founding chair of the National Fatherhood Initiative. All right. Now you see, how many of you knew about David Blankenhorn in your group before this time? Tim, did you know about David Blankenhorn?
Not a thing. And I've been working with fathers for over 3 years and working with, in conjunction with NFI. So, man, I saw that book, said, I need to get that book.
Right. And so now you can see how we're going to really learn the fatherhood movement through our homework assignment. Mm-hmm. All right. Let me group number one. Did group number one come up with a name?
The Fearless Four.
Hey, Beverly, Fearless Four. Okay. All right. And Beverly, who did y'all have to look up? What did you have? An event, an organization, or
we had Charles Augustus Ballard.
Charles Augustus Ballard. Who was Dr. Charles Augustus Ballard?
He was the founder, president, and CEO of the Institute for Responsible Fatherhood and Family Revitalization.
Absolutely.
He became a father at 17, spent time in jail, et cetera, et cetera.
Et cetera, et cetera. Charles Ballard. The distinction that Charles Ballard has in our work is that he was in a maternal and child health context before it started in 1991. Charles Ballard in 1979 focused on infant mortality reduction, started the very first community-based fatherhood program in 1979, right? And it's just so important to know who he is, because let me tell you what I learned from Charles Ballard. I never forgot it. And when I said it to you, you won't forget it either. Charles Ballard said to me, if you want to get fathers engaged in programs, the first thing you have to do is assume that the father wants to be involved in the life of his child. He said, the very first thing you got to think about. You should not think about the fact that he's not there because he was a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. He was a one-night stand, didn't love his kids. He said, the first thing you should assume is that he wants to be there. And if you assume that he wants to be there, then what it takes you to is that if he wants to be there, what are the barriers that needs to be overcome to get him engaged on a consistent basis? That is a powerful, powerful understanding of the work that we do. We got to assume that if the father is not there, that he wants to be there, and that the real issue of his engagement are the barriers that stand in the way. And that's part of the work that we have to do in the programs. And so, listen, I just want to give us a sample of how we're going to be starting our sessions. We're going to talk about, pioneering efforts in the fatherhood field to ground us in our understanding. And after we get done, after the first couple sessions, what we're going to do, we're going to post them in a place that all of us will have access to those things. And so it's just going to be so important for us in learning and helping you grow in your understanding of the fatherhood work. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now, again, what's going to happen is Lisa is going to send each of you a copy of the homework assignment, and your homework assignment, just like you did the work on Blankenhorn, just like you did the work on Charles Ballard, you have to answer and provide a statement, a written statement summary. And what I would recommend that you do, split it up. That should not just be one person. Everybody should have an assignment. So, for example, you may have somebody that has Gordon Berlin and somebody who has Ken Canfield. That's their assignment. Somebody else who has Ron Haskins and Vivian Gaston. That's their assignment. So that when you come together, you can complete your project without anyone thinking that it's onerous on them, because everybody, you should function as a team, and it will lighten the load in completing the homework exercise. But at the end of the homework exercise, we all will know about the significant contributions of these individuals, these organizations, the legislation, and the court decisions. All right? So y'all ready to go with the Academy? Can I count on y'all to be here on the 24th? You got to come. It's going to be exciting. For those folks who are not here today, just let them know what they missed and to join us next time. There will be an opportunity because we're going to post these things on the NISQ website, so people who don't attend will have an opportunity to catch up. But I want you to be here and to experience in person these experts that we're going to put in front of you during this Academy series. And I'm just looking forward to working with you and continue to grow your capacity to work with fathers. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Denisha or Ken.
Ken.
Ken? Okay.
Yes, so we see we've launched the pre and post that we said this assessment. We asked you the same questions at the beginning. We hope that even with today's information, that in your excitement, that you're feeling even more grounded. And so go ahead and just answer those 5 questions really quickly. Just scroll down to get to each 5. And we almost have half of you, so go ahead and do that. And can we move on while that's still up, Denisha, so we can make sure we honor people's time today? But please complete the assessment. It's really important for us to be able to measure our knowledge. So thank you. Denisha, back to you.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you, Dean Johnson. And then this survey, will put this link in the chat, or you can also take your phone out and hover over this QR code. And you can access the survey. The survey is a little different than the post assessment. This survey is a satisfaction survey. So we'd love to know just how we did today. How was your first Learning Academy out of the 5? We hope to see you next session, August 24th. But this survey is to just measure that. So please take some time. You don't have to do it in real time. You can copy the link. We'll also have that link out for you to complete at a later time. Next slide, please. And to go over our homework and next steps. So like Dean Johnson said earlier, we will be purchasing that book for you, Your Journey to Co-Parenting. And all you have to do again is to hover over this QR code to fill out this the sign up. And to request that copy, your project director must complete that request form by following this link in the chat box or scanning the QR code. So you can go ahead and find that link and send it over to your project director. Just let them know it's for the Fatherhood Learning Academy, and that will purchase that book for you and it'll be yours. Feel free to pass it on and things like that. So we'll have these slides again for you. This is a recorded session on the EPIC website. So if you don't get a chance to take down that survey code or take down that URL, you'll have it afterwards. Next slide, please. Another part of your homework is just that same form, that same exercise we did today. So completing the assignment, as Dean Johnson said, coordinate with your group, whether that's virtually, you can go on the phone, whatever it is, over email, and break it up. It's a few names, a few different legislation topics, things like that. So break it up, make it your own, and be ready to come back August 24th to share your responses. Again, this is in the chat, but it's also on our EPIC website if you needed to download it later on. Next slide, please. Another way to stay connected outside of Zoom and just email, we also have our Collab. For those who aren't familiar with Collab, Collab is our own collaborative site. You can go on there and share different ideas. You can share your contact information. It's like a large discussion board that's open to all of you. So if you need that site, we'll also include that in the notes from this session, and you can connect with your fellow participants. You can also connect with Dr. Johnson. You can either email him or use the Collab site, and we will flag and navigate those requests right over to him. If you do not have a Collab account, this is your first time hearing about Collab, please email healthystart@nishu.org. We will get that set up for you as soon as possible. So I'll give some folks just a quick second just to write that down in case you do not have a Collab account. So healthystart@nishu.org. Next slide, please. Another reminder, our next session will be Tuesday, August 24th, same time, same place, 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern time. Next slide. Here is just a quick reminder of the things that are going on next month, August, different deadlines. This could be found again on our EPIC website. Any deadlines or events that we have going on, this is not a solidified flyer. And if there's any other events that come on, we will add it on so you can keep track of what's going on at Healthy Start. Next slide, please. A big thank you for joining us for our first out of 5 sessions. We're so excited to get to learn more about your programs and learn in general with the Academy. A big thank you to Dean Johnson for agreeing to be our Dean and continuing on with us on this great journey. Thank you, Ken, for introducing us and keeping us on track with this Learning Academy.